So.
Can we talk about trauma for a second?
Yeah, sure.
So I feel like there's a stigma with trauma. Like trauma is just this really big word. You know, like people associate trauma with rape, molestation, or like drowning. Whenever I drown, like, you know, big T trauma. And then you like this new concept is, which I don't believe is a new concept. I think they just put a label to something of the little T trauma. Yeah. So the stuff that isn't as drastic or big. Right. But wouldn't you say that trauma is just very simply defined as like an event or a circumstance that then shaped the way you think at any level? Like it's not this big thing, but it's just stuff that happened either once or over a course of a period of time that now you think and behave differently because of the impression that had upon you. So when you say heal trauma, it's like, oh, that sounds like a big fucking thing. Yeah. But it doesn't always have to be, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great point. I think like my generation is, I think, doing a pretty good job at starting to work through things, you know, but I think of my parents' generation and then my grandmother. My grandmother went through some crazy traumas as a child, and she's the most beautiful woman, and she's so powerful and so strong and so kind, and she didn't allow those traumas to change who she is. But she, you know, through her experiences, then the way she parented was different towards my mom because of the way that she was raised. And then it's kind of come down, you know, it's just gone through the family system. But there's this huge illusion that, oh, it's so scary, trauma, you know, but really it's important work. And it can be, like you were saying, like, it could be something that how you interpreted it was something that was hard or difficult or challenging or whatever it is, you know, resulted in a behavior change or, you know, a life-altering change sometimes, you know. But I think that it is important for us to address that, and I think that I see that in my generation, like where they're recognizing the patterns and they're wanting to make changes, you know.
Yeah, I don't think it's this big. It could just be a couple little things that happen over and over, like annoyances even, to where you're now closed off from talking to certain people because they exhibit these same behaviors that you were already fed up with at a minor level. Therefore, you avoid the connection, you avoid that interaction, you avoid that situation entirely because in your mind, it's not something that you want to do or be a part of anymore because you're already so annoyed with it. Mm-hmm. As a result, you miss out on that entire experience. Mm-hmm. And more importantly, you miss out on being proven wrong. Mm-hmm. You know, like if we just keep going through our life with the expectation, I know how this ends and I'm not going to go down that path because of it, I mean, we're just missing out and we're staying in our like narrow lane. And it just seems it doesn't seem conducive at all for opening yourself up to the endless possibilities and varieties of what life has to offer you, or like the human relation has to offer you with other people. Yeah. You said it perfectly, beautifully. I'm in trauma therapy. I'm in trauma therapy.
I know. I've always said you need to be a therapist. I know you won't, but no. You need to. You have a beautiful way at looking at things and verbalizing. I guess you do that through sponsorship, you know, maybe with your sponsees, but a beautiful way at like looking at things differently, using perspective, and then almost like verbalizing. I mean, you have changed my life through having hard conversations and telling me things that I didn't want to hear or think about. And you were that person. And many times when I tell the story of what you told me, people are like, what? And I'm like, but that is the cool thing about you, is you can say it. And I know that it comes from love and from the best intentions. And we need therapists that aren't scared to have hard conversations, because sometimes it can be a little intimidating, you know, but you do a beautiful job saying, like, don't be selfish.
He does.
Yeah.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a culmination of growth over the last 9 years almost. Yeah. Same with John. You know, John articulates hope better than any, because John has a big goal of just putting things in their most simple form.
Yeah.
I remember one time I called John and he was like, okay, like I vented to him for a second. He's like, okay, let me get this down to its most simple form. So this is what we're talking about, right? And then he just went from there. And that's just stuck with me ever since.
Yeah. And, you know, John, I think, too, like I can remember a time when there was this kid that came in, he really needed help, and he was really in a rough spot, and you took him on as a sponsee. And I was, like, at my house on the weekend, and this kid wanted to run away, and you sat and listened. I think we talked on three-way for, like, 30 minutes, you know, and the kid did end up running away. But you did a beautiful job. Like, I do love that about you, where you're just like, this is it. And you do make it very simple and clear, especially for teens that are taking their first toe dip into the 12 steps and don't even know which way is up sometimes. You do a really great job at just simplifying it and making it attractive too, you know, where they want to do it. Talk about the cooking wine and your adventures. And
this is not a time to bring that story up.
But I'm just saying, like, share your experience, and then the kids are like, you know, like, that's a lot like me, you know?
Is there an opposite to trauma? Because when we think about, like, negative experiences, whether it's minor, like, annoyances from many people or whatever, to big things, is there an opposite word for trauma? Because when I think about, like, what you just said with John, 30 minutes of a conversation, took him on, like, one small thing from John has this massive impact. And I know, like, people that are kind to me that do very minor things, you know, have a huge impact on me over time even. And so is there like an opposite word? I don't even if that's even the correct thing to ask, but because it makes you think every little thing you do matters. Yeah. Whether it's on the negative side of the spectrum or the positive side of the spectrum, you know, and that sounds kind of cliche, like smiling, saying thank you and stuff. But then, like, you're a dick, and it's like, okay, yeah, they're gonna remember that too. Yeah. You know, so it's like every little thing you do just seems to be huge, massive, and I don't know if there's like another word that's trauma or if it's positive trauma, you know.
I actually have a response for that question.
Okay, go for it.
Because it's something that I have been working on in therapy. But so Jax, my therapist, she'll call them glimmers, right? So I have like traumatic experiences, which can be small or big, and I'll take them home and I'll think about them, or in my day-to-day life, they'll affect my actions or how I engage with people. And so like we've been going through this practice of like identifying glimmers of like moments that I feel happiness or joy or, you know, just a positive one, and then being really intentional about thinking about that moment throughout the day. So, you know, like for example, not going to get terribly into it, but on Tuesday I had a really hard conversation with my old man to the point where I had to leave work because I was not in a good place, and I was just rummaging around the old brain about it. But, you know, then Wednesday night I go over to, you know, our buddy's house who just had their second kid, and I'm holding like little dude. His name's Mason. He's amazing, and like I'm just filled with all this like happiness and joy. And so like, instead of, like, whenever I started thinking about the stuff I went through with my dad, I would replace it with thinking about old Mason and, like, you know, just remembering that glimmer, you know, where I felt really nice, felt really happy, very content, and, like, a whole bunch of love and stuff. And so, like, you know, and just finding that in like all types of different places, like whether it's a good conversation at work, as opposed to like focusing on the bad one, which I can do often, where I'm like, man, that was a hard conversation, or man, that guy really annoyed me. It's like, well, I had a great conversation with so and so, and it was beautiful and fantastic. And so like trying to, you know, for me, like replace those negative, you know, traumatic, you know, deals with what Jax calls glimmers, has been really beneficial to me, not getting in like a really bad headspace or staying in a bad headspace.
Glimmers.
Oh, there you go.
Glimmers.
Yeah, glimmers. I like that. What a good therapist.
Little glimmers of hope, dude.
Yeah, glimmers of hope. But, you know, I also like think of like DBT, right? Where like it's possible for two things to be true at the same time. Like we can have like some things go down, but then we also have glimmers. We have big T's going on, but we have some glimmers going on maybe at the same time, but I do like that term. That's nice. Glimmers. So I'm like, good
glimmers.
Things.
So for everybody listening, try and recognize if you're providing trauma for somebody or you're providing glimmers for somebody. There you go. Everything you do matters. You will make an impression either on yourself or somebody else, whether you like it or not. Stay hard.
Stay hard.
Who's gonna push the boats?
What?
It's a David Goggins deal.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
Stay hard's also a David Goggins deal.
Okay, love you both.
Damn.
I love you. Yeah.
Thank you, Meredith.
Yeah, thank you.